Good evening. It's Sunday the 6th of November 2011. I'm Chris Jury and you're listening to Agitpop on North Cotswold Community Radio. Tonight I'm going to be talking to Cotswold-based actor Dominic Mafham, best known for his performances in Paula Milne's The Fragile Heart, Charles Dickens' Our Mutual Friend, Anthony Minghell's The English Patient, and TV series Always and Everyone, Kingdom, and most recently Land Girls. But first, let's set the scene by listening to Show Business by Gil Scott-Heron.
Well, they got your career for only 95%. Well, that leaves enough for fronts like PP suits and pays rent. Sing the blues and pay your dues and not know who you are. Make you wonder why so many people want to be a star. Well, do you really want to be in show business? Out in places you got no business, and people say so wanna be in show business, wanna be in show business. It's alright with me, yeah, it's alright with me, just as long as you know you're only as important to them as your latest hit. That's a precarious position for a plastic king to sit. Lawyer's game is double same. Your fate is in their hand. You're a millionaire without a dime. You just don't understand. Well, do you really want to be in show business? The instant high and constant come and go business got you hanging out in places you got no business. And people say they so wanna be in show business, wanna be in show business. It's alright with me. It's alright with me, just as long as you know you're up and down a ladder of success that runs both ways, and you see all the worst and the best damn near every day. Fans and fans and one night stand fill your mind with doubt, and on closing day you're lucky to say down but still not out. Well, do you really want to be in show business? Come and go business got you proving exactly how much you don't know business, and people say they so wanna be in show business, 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 wanna be in show business. It's alright with me.
And there we are, that's Show Business by Gil Scott-Heron, the marvellous Gil Scott-Heron, who I was introduced to through the book 33 Revolutions Per Minute, which in fact next week on Agitpop we will be talking to the author of that book, Dorian Linsky. But today we are talking to Dominic Mafham. Hello, Dominic.
Hello.
And Dominic is a local actor, lives in Stretton-on-Foss, am I right in saying?
If we want to put that out there, yeah. Tell the world.
Tell the world. Lives locally in Stretton, and you've just finished in the West End, Dom?
I have, yeah. We did I did a play called Journey's End, which is a beautiful play, a First World War play. It was the only play actually written about the First World War by someone who was in it, and is often thought of as an anti-war play, although it's very hard to be pro-war after watching it. But I don't think it was written as an anti-war play. I think it was written more as a sort of a tribute, really, to the men that he was with. And it was, anyway, whatever. I mean, it's an absolutely beautiful play. It's still on tour, actually. I left after London, but it was a fantastic. And the part I was playing was a beautiful man who was this sort of paternalistic father figure, which is absolutely outrageous given how young I am. But there I am playing
it comes to us all.
These father figures.
I know, tell me about it.
But yes, it was a great experience.
It comes to us all, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, I came down and saw you in the production. It was an amazing production, as you say, and a very powerful production, and not the type of thing that you tend to see in the West End these days. So and yet it did very, very well, didn't it?
It did very well. I mean, it's been that particular play. I mean, I think plays like that, if if you can lump them together, I mean, fell out of favour. I mean, I think they fell out of favour in the 60s, really. And as this is a political show, I mean, it's relevant. I mean, they were regarded as old-fashioned. They were regarded as well-made plays and conventional, and I think it got lumped in with.
So when you say that type of play, you don't mean a political play. You mean a play that is well made with a strong 3-act structure, narrative, resolution, and all of those.
Yeah.
Tradition elements of story.
Absolutely. I mean, no, it was never regarded. I don't think it was regarded particularly as necessarily as an anti-war play, as a political play in that sense. So no, it was regarded as being an old-fashioned, but it was also regarded as being an upper-class play, or a middle-class play anyway. And I think a lot of drama in the 60s kind of wanted to turn that over. And obviously, I mean, the obvious production that did that was "Oh, What a Lovely War," which put two fingers up to the officer class, and Joan Littlewood's production, and so that's really sort of gathered momentum then, and that was the spirit of theatre for a while, and then this particular production I was involved with was resurrected about 7 years ago, I think, and I think people kind of woke up to it and sort of realised, sort of saw it afresh, and saw it as an incredibly. I mean, time is an amazing thing. I mean, this one of the things that was difficult about the play was that it was put on in 1927, I think. So it was less than 10 years after the end of the First World War, and so the country was. I mean, we think things are bad now. I mean, my God, I mean, that was. And
there'd been the flu immediately after
absolutely.
that, so there was hardly anybody left.
Brought to his knees. I mean, it was absolutely brought to his knees. And there wasn't a place in Britain that wasn't touched by it, that everybody knew somebody who died.
I mean, I think that your thing about the class, though, that was the thing that I felt about the play, was that there was almost a sort of. Blackadder, then, when Blackadder did the First World War, there was almost like Blackadder's First World War thing was a sort of pastiche of Journey's End.
Yeah, definitely. They will have definitely, absolutely.
Because the officer, all the working class characters were jolly or stupid, or there was that element to it, and the only people who we were sort of really interested in the play are the. I think we've got a listener ringing in. Thank you very much there.
It's live.
It's live. So Journey's End, and it was an amazing production, and I'm sure that people should go and see it.
It's well worth seeing. I mean, it's just as if if anybody hasn't seen it, it's still on tour at the moment, and it really is. It's worth seeing. I mean, it really is a very special play.
So, Dominic, tell me how you. There's quite a few professional actors around here because of Stratford. Is that how you ended up around here?
Yeah. People work at the RSC, they buy a house around here, and then never work at the RSC again. That's how it works.
That's how it works. I once had a house directly opposite the London Weekend Television Rehearsal Studios.
Yes. Oh, you've never worked for.
And I never worked. I never worked for them ever. Yeah. Until I left, and about 3 months after I moved to Ealing, which was the other side of London, I got a job at those studios. It's like, geez.
Well, there was more BBC studios, weren't there? The Ealing ones, yeah.
And then I was schlepping all the way back to while I was in South London, I was always schlepping all the way to White City. Anyway, there we go. So you were with the RSC for 4 years in the 90s, then? Yeah,
I left drama school in '89, and then did a nice job, actually. It was a community theatre company touring this really bonkers devised production around the West Country to schools and village halls and that kind of thing. And
was there a message?
If there was, I never found out what it was. It was nuts.
I did Freddie Fluoride around the primary schools of Lincolnshire. That was my first job.
Yeah.
Well, I was Freddie Fluoride.
Stood you in good stead, didn't it?
Yeah.
Made you the man you are.
Made me the man I am. Yeah. Freddie Fluoride in Desmond the Dentist, I think the show was called.
Right.
Marvellous.
That sounds good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The heady heights of show business.
Yes.
As Gil Scott Heron said. So yeah, we've all done our time, and then you came to Stratford.
Yes. Yeah. I went to Stratford, and It's very. It was good. It was an amazing first job, and in those days you did a year in Stratford. You did then the whole shebang moved up to Newcastle for a month to give the North some theatre, and then moved down to London, and they dropped some of the productions that didn't work so well on the way, so I did that twice, and it was great. I learned more doing that than I did at drama school, frankly. I mean, it was amazing. And and then after that, just worked as a jobbing actor.
So, you know the format of the show here. We've got you've chosen some great songs here, most of which we've never had on the show before. So
that's good. Yeah,
very good. And we'll play the first one now, which is a Beatles recording. People will be very pleased, I'm sure. And this is Taxman from Revolver.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2.
Let me tell you how it will be. There's one for you, 19 for me. 'Cause I'm the tax man. Yeah, I'm the tax man. Should 5% appear too small? Be thankful I don't take it all. 'Cause I'm the tax man. Yeah, I'm the tax man. If you drive a car, I'll tax the street. If you try to sit, I'll tax your seat. If you get too cold, I'll tax the heat. If you take a walk, I'll tax your feet. Tax man. But I'm the tax man. Yeah, I'm the tax man. Don't ask me what I want it for, Mr. Wilson. If you don't want to pay some more, Mr. Heath. 'Cause I'm the tax man. Yeah, I'm the tax man. And my advice for those who die, tax man, declare the pennies on your eyes, tax man. 'Cause I'm the tax man. Yeah, I'm the tax man. And you're working for no one but me.
And there we are. That's Taxman from 1966 there from the Revolver album. So tell me about what interested you and why you thought you wanted that song on the show.
Well, I love the song, and when I was looking at songs to bring here, I was thinking that there aren't many right-wing political songs. There aren't many songs extolling the virtues of deregulation or the menace of the minimum wage. So, and as I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about country music. And country music is sort of associated with the right, but it's not really politicized in that sense. And actually, it's sort of changed anyway, hasn't it? It's evolved, and it's not necessarily as cut and dry as that. And I suppose that I mean, it's a bit. I didn't necessarily want to choose any right-wing songs. I was just thinking about it, and then I thought of Taxman, and I thought, well, it must have been a very strange thing for the richest pop group and the biggest pop group maybe possibly the world had seen to be writing a song about complaining about paying tax. And it's quite a bold thing to do. And so I sort of, but it's a great song. I mean, it's a great song. It's George Harrison wrote it. And and actually, when you think about it, tax was at 95%, and money was just pouring out of government into what? And it was a very it was a really strange time, and so it was an interesting song, and so that's why I chose it. It's interesting. You know, you've chosen the running order, and I think it's a good one to kick off with because it gets the ball rolling. But so I think it's interesting because it's not easy, and I think a lot of the trouble with a lot of political songs is that they preach to to the converted often.
Well, I mean, I do think it's a bit of a cheat for the Beatles to be complaining about paying tax. I have to say.
No,
I mean, when this was written, 66. I don't think
was it 66?
66.
Yeah.
The tax had got to 95%, certainly by 76.
No.
I mean,
it was 95% when this was written.
Oh, right.
That's what they were talking about.
And of course, people always go, that's 95% of earnings, but of course it's not. It's 95% of earnings above quite high threshold. But anyway, we won't get into the intricacies of tax law.
Tax is any political discussion. You're going to talk about tax.
Yes, and you know, clearly the far right, and especially the American far right, the anarcho-capitalists, would argue that the state should provide the very minimum, and there should be no tax is theft, is the famous line. So yeah, you're absolutely right, and they argue that. If there's no tax, then business will provide everything for everyone, and we'll all be well. I personally don't see much evidence of that in the world, and never have seen much evidence of that.
No, I got into a funny. I got into Twitter. I didn't really get Twitter. And I did it this year, and in Twitter people can. Search for phrases or words, and if you use a particular word, people are alerted to it, and they can search for it. Mm-hmm. And I, possibly inadvisedly, used the term right-wing anarchist, and of course there are a lot of anarchists out there in the world who search the word anarchy. So whenever it pops up, they go, "Aha! There's our friend anarchy," and they have a look, and they couldn't bear me appropriating their beloved word to a right wing, to the right.
Well, I mean, I myself have taken what I would call an anarchist turn in the last 3 or 4 years, and to the extent that I don't believe that socialism or communism can be the answer, and that for me the problem is power, the inappropriate use of power, whoever's using it. But yeah, and I would argue with those socialist anarchists, and because anarcho-capitalism, which is the very far right, shares their anarchist concern about freedom as the primary concern is shared by anarcho-capitalists, and the difference is that they regard tax as an infringement on their liberty, as a sort of theft.
Yeah, well, you look at the rates of corporate tax that the big banks pay.
And the only way you could turn that round, not the only way, but the way I would turn that round is to say that system works. I understand the logic of it if you're rich. And if you're not rich, then anarcho-capitalism basically is oppressive, because you will be a victim of capitalism just as much as you will be of the state. That anarcho-capitalists only see the state as oppressive and not capitalism. But the 19th century, when we had free market capitalism, we had children up chimneys, we had people working 15, 17 hours a day.
Yeah, well,
we'll
get onto that later, because I've chosen there's a couple of Irish songs in there, and that's been part of my political consciousness, has had an Irish tint to it for sort of personal reasons, and very much so. I mean, you see it, and that's the thing, and the people, it's very obviously these things are incredibly complex, and you can't just sort of remove wholesale one, the one system and replace it with what? I mean, the things have to evolve. I think. I mean, I think they do, and I don't think revolutions necessarily. Well, they don't work, and if anything to be of value and permanence. I mean, I think it has to evolve that way. And I think when you look at what the way that human nature is, I think that some form of capitalism, much as I find it abhorrent a lot of the time, I mean, that you have to go with that to a certain extent.
Well, after the Second World War, there was the post-war consensus, both in America and in England, which was of a regulated and managed form of capitalism combined with a welfare state. And nobody's given me a coherent reason why that's a problem, actually. I would say that, yes, capitalism can give you innovation, change, new technology, and provide services and the use of creativity and imagination that probably and possibly the state can't. I understand that. But as I say, on the other hand, capitalism is structurally monopolistic. So the notion of competition as being the driving force of freedom, actually the system itself is geared towards the opposite of that. If left alone, you'll end up with one company.
Yes, that's right. You see that.
And you see it all over. And every capitalist country in the world, including America, has antitrust laws, anti-monopoly laws, because they know that.
Yes.
They know that actually what you would end up is with one commercial company running the world.
Yeah.
So that the system itself is fraught with problems. I certainly agree that that the history of revolutions, certainly in the 20th century, wasn't fantastic. But it is worth pointing...
There's more than not fantastic.
Well,
it resulted in genocide.
Yes, and it's worth
wholesale misery and torture.
And and as I would say, so did capitalism in many places in the world, and still is. But what I would say is America was started by a revolution. So an American guy commenting on my blog said about Tahrir Square, he started saying, oh, you can't have revolution never works, revolutions blah 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 blah. And I did point out to him that America, the American state, came about through a violent revolution against an oppressive imperial power, and it startled him a little bit. I don't think he quite had understood.
Yes, I mean sometimes things violently get shaken up, and then you throw the chips up and they land, and what have you got? And that's why you've got to maturely look at the mechanisms that you've got and try and work with them. In that, in Ireland, for instance, you see the history of that country, and there were no mechanisms for having a voice. I mean, you look at the Catholic population in Ireland; they couldn't do anything. They couldn't own anything. They couldn't vote. They couldn't travel. I mean, they couldn't do anything. They couldn't eat. And people, people wonder why, there's a violent history of rebellion in Ireland. Well,
and it is hilarious when you think about that. It's actually the argument between Catholic and Protestants was between two branches of the same religion. It's not even between Muslims, Islam, and Christianity.
No, religion had nothing to do with it.
Well, ultimately, it's tribal.
Tribalism.
Yeah, absolutely, of course.
Yeah.
But
and class.
Yeah, and class. Yeah, and
they're not talking about transubstantiation.
No, no,
not really.
They were talking about the papists.
Yes.
No surrender. Anyway. Let's move on to your next song here, which is a Dylan bootleg.
Yes, now can I just introduce this?
Please do.
Because it's not actually a song. It is a recording that Dylan was asked to say a few words about Woody Guthrie, who was his hero. And he, at this big event. And so this is a recording of Dylan's response to his invitation to write a few words on his hero, Woody Guthrie.
There's this book coming out, and they asked me to write something about Woody. Sort of like, what does Woody Guthrie mean to you in 25 words? And I couldn't do it. I wrote out 5 pages, and I have it here. I have it here by accident, actually. But I'd like to say this out loud. So if you can sort of roll along with this thing here. This is called Last Thoughts on Woody Guthrie. When your head gets twisted and your mind grows numb, when you think you're too old, too young, too smart, or too dumb, when you're lagging behind and losing your pace in a slow-motion crawl or life's busy race, no matter what you're doing, if you start giving up, if the wine don't come to the top of your cup, if the wind got you sideways with one hand holding on and the other starts slipping and the feeling is gone, and your train engine fire needs a new spark to catch it, and the wood's easy finding, but you're lazy to fetch it, and your sidewalk starts curling and the street gets too long, and you start walking backwards so you know that it's wrong, and lonesome comes up as down goes the day, and tomorrow's morning seems so far away, and you feel the reins from your pony are slipping, and your rope is a-sliding because your hands are dripping, and your sun-decked desert and evergreen valleys turn to broken-down slums and trash-can alleys, and your sky cries water and your drain pipes are pouring, and the lightnings are flashing, and the thunders are crashing, and the windows are rattling and breaking, and the rooftops are shaking, and your whole world's slamming and banging, and your minutes of sun turn to hours of storm, and to yourself you sometimes say, I never knew it was going to be this way, why didn't they tell me the day I was born? And you start getting chills, and you're jumping from sweat, and you're looking for something you ain't quite found yet, and you're knee-deep in dark water with your hands in the air, and the whole world's watching with a window peak stare, and your good gal leaves, and she's long gone a-flying, and your heart feels sick like fish when they're frying. And your jackhammer falls from your hands to your feet, but you need it badly, and it lays on the street, and your bell's banging loudly, but you can't hear its beat, and you think your ears might have been hurt, or your eyes have turned filthy from the sight-binding dirt, and you figured you failed in yesterday's rush, and you were faked out and fooled while facing a four-flush, and all the time you're holding three queens. It's making you mad, it's making you mean, like in the middle of Life magazine, bouncing around a pinball machine. And there's something on your mind that you want to be saying, that somebody someplace ought to be hearing, but it's trapped on your tongue, sealed in your head, and it bothers you badly when you're laying in bed. And no matter how you try, you just can't say it, and you're scared to your soul you just might forget it. And your eyes get sunny from the tears in your head, and your pillows of feathers turn to blankets of lead, and the lion's mouth opens, and you're staring at his teeth, and his jaws start closing with you underneath, and you're flat on your belly with your hands tied behind, and you wish you'd never taken that last detour sign. You say to yourself, just what am I doing? On this road I'm walking, on this trail I'm turning, on this curve I'm hanging, on this pathway I'm strolling, in the space I'm taking, in this air I'm inhaling. Am I mixed up too much? Am I mixed up too hard? Why am I walking? Where am I running? What am I saying? What am I knowing on this guitar I'm playing? On this banjo I'm feeling, on this mandolin I'm strumming, in a song I'm singing, in a tune I'm humming, in the words that I'm thinking, in the words I'm writing. In this ocean of hours I'm all the time drinking. Who am I helping? What am I breaking? What am I giving? What am I taking? But you try with your whole soul best never to think these thoughts, and never to let them kind of thoughts gain ground or make your heart pound. But then again, you know when they're around, just waiting for a chance to slip and drop down. Because sometimes you hear them in the nighttime come creeping, and you fear they might catch you sleeping, and you jump from your bed from the last chapter of dreaming, and you can't remember for the best of your thinking if that was you in a dream that was screaming. And you know that's something special you're needing. You know there's no drug that'll do for the healing, and no liquor in the land to stop your brain from bleeding. You need something special. You need something special, all right. You need a fast-flying train on a tornado track to shoot you someplace and shoot you back. You need a cyclone wind on a steam engine howler that's been banging and booming and blowing forever, that knows your troubles 100 times over. You need a greyhound bus that don't bar no race, that won't laugh at your looks, your voice, or your face, and buying a number of bets in the book will be rolling long after the bubblegum craze. You need something to open up a new door, to show you something you've seen before but overlooked 100 times or more. You need something to open your eyes. You need something to make it known that it's you and no one else that owns that spot that you're standing, that space that you're sitting, that the world ain't got you beat. It ain't got you licked. It can't get you crazy no matter how many times you might get kicked. You need something special, all right. You need something special to give you hope. But hope's just a word that maybe you said, maybe you heard on some windy corner around a wide-angled curve. But that's what you need, man, and you need it bad. And your trouble is you know it too good, because you look and you start getting the chills, because you can't find it on a dollar bill, and it ain't on Macy's windowsill. And it ain't on a real rich kid's road map, and it ain't made in no fat kid's fraternity house, and it ain't made in no Hollywood wheat germ, and it ain't on that dim-lit stage with that half-wit comedian on it, ranting and raving and taking your money, and you think it's funny. Now you can't find it neither in no nightclub, no yacht club, and it ain't in the seats of a supper club, and sure as hell you're bound to tell, no matter how hard you rub, you just ain't gonna find it on your ticket stub. No, it ain't in the rumors people are telling you, it ain't in the pimple lotion people are selling you, it ain't in the cardboard box house or down any movie star's blouse, and you can't find it on the golf course. And Uncle Remus can't tell you, and neither can Santa Claus. And it ain't in the cream puff hairdo or cotton candy clothes. It ain't in the dime store dummies and bubblegum goons. It ain't in the marshmallow noises of the chocolate cake voices that come knocking and tapping and Christmas rapping, saying, ain't I pretty, ain't I cute, look at my skin shine, look at my skin glow. Look at my skin laugh, look at my skin cry, when you can't even sense if they got any insides, these people so pretty in their ribbons and bows. Now you'll not now no other day find it on the doorsteps made of paper mache, and inside with the people made of molasses that every other day buy a new pair of sunglasses. And ain't in the 50-star generals and flipped-out phonies who turn you in for a tenth of a penny, who breathe and burp and bend and crack, and before you can count from 1 to 10, do it all over again, but this time behind your back, my friend. The ones that wheel and deal and whirl and twirl and play games with each other in the sandbox world. You can't find it either in the no-talent fools that run around gallant and make all the rules for the ones that got talent. It ain't the ones that ain't got any talent but think they do and think they're fooling you. The ones that jump on the wagon just for a while because they know it's in style. To get their kicks, get out of it quick, and make all kinds of money and chicks. And you yell to yourself and you throw down your hat saying, Christ, do I got to be like that? Ain't there no one here that knows where I'm at? Ain't there no one here that knows how I feel? Good God Almighty, that stuff ain't real. No, but that ain't your game. It ain't your race. You can't hear your name. You can't see your face. You got to look some other place. And where do you look for this hope that you're seeking? Where do you look for this lamp that's a-burning? Where do you look for this oil well gushing? Where do you look for this candle that's glowing? Where do you look for this hope that you know is there and out there somewhere? And your feet can only walk down 2 kinds of roads. Your eyes can only look through 2 kinds of windows. Your nose can only smell 2 kinds of hallways. You can touch and twist and turn 2 kinds of doorknobs. You can either go to the church of your choice or you go to Brooklyn State Hospital. You find God in the church of your choice. You find Woody Guthrie in Brooklyn State Hospital. And that's only my opinion. I may be right or wrong. You find them both in Grand Canyon, sundown.
Wow. There we are. Last thoughts on Woody Guthrie by Bob Dylan there, a poem. I'll tell you what, me and comrade Liam here, we went to see a band called the King Blues on Wednesday, and they have a song called What If Punk Never Happened, which has got exactly the same feel of that, hasn't it, Liam?
Yeah, it's really good.
It's got that rhythm, that rap feel to it, actually.
Yeah.
It's very
And the other thing it reminded me of was a group called The Last Poets, who had some albums out in the very early 60s, around this time, actually, who then eventually became rap.
Yeah.
Their stuff, spoken stuff with beat underneath it, because you can imagine that with a bit of a rap thing. But that's truly extraordinary.
It is absolutely so.
I've never heard of it before.
He was 22 when he did that.
And reading the books about him, he was going to see Woody Guthrie, because he
Yeah.
mentions that Woody Guthrie was in the hospital
Yeah.
there, because Woody Guthrie by then was in a pretty bad state in the hospital just
Yeah.
outside in Brooklyn, and he was going to see him quite regularly at that time, wasn't he?
Yeah. I mean, he tracked him down and basically just camped by his bedside. And Dylan's identity at that point, I think, was quite fluid, wasn't it? And he was pretending to be a hick from down south, and and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And but yeah, so he was just a sponge soaking up all of this stuff, and this incredible period when he dropped out of university to arriving in New York City to, and the journey that he had in that, I think it was about a year, and just soaked up absolutely everything along the way, including, I mean, he went to some lovely guy put him up down south somewhere because he wanted to meet some musicians down there, and when he came back from, he just said, oh well, look, you can help yourself to whatever in the house, and actually Dylan had helped himself to half his record collection.
Yeah, that's right. Taking it with him. Yeah.
And,
Yeah, no.
Yeah. No, was it Chronicles, the book?
Yeah.
The autobiography?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because that is the autobiography, and then there's a brilliant biography as well. I can't remember who wrote it.
Yeah, I can't remember whether it was Chronicles or...
The Chronicles, fantastic
Yeah,
book,
amazing,
actually.
yeah. But, you see, that brings me back. Earlier on, you said something like protest songs are often preaching to the converted, as if that was a problem. Do you think that's a problem?
No, I can just talk about my own personal response to songs and what I like to hear. I can't bear the Manic Street Preachers. I agree with a lot of their sentiments, but I just can't bear the self-righteousness in the songs. I just turn off.
Yeah.
And so I think that for me, I mean, there is something about singing, singing a song with a very obvious message that's anthemic, that you can all join along to, because it reinforces your sense of identity and what you believe in as a group. So I can see that, but when the song is sort of got its finger out and it's pointing at me and prodding me, then I just sort of back off, even if I agree with it. And I just don't like songs like that. I prefer songs that sort of draw me in and make me think.
Yeah, sure. But your point there was exactly the point I was going to make. That in fact, because the mainstream media so rarely addresses the concerns that protest songs address, that actually part of their function is to give a shared culture for people that they're not going to get on mainstream media. And that there was a song called Liar Liar, which was put out just before last Christmas, or the Christmas before, I think, the Christmas before, a little reggae song by a kid, and Captain Scar, and that became common currency amongst people of the left, that they'd all heard this, and when it was played at rallies and things like that, there'd be like this sort of this laugh of recognition and this sense of because very often people, they're not getting that from any mainstream media. So I don't have a problem with that, frankly, but.
It's just taste. I mean, it's just how you respond to. On that particular thing, one of the songs I was going to choose for this was "Free Nelson Mandela," which the story of that's quite interesting.
Yes,
it was written as a sort of a small song, and it was kind of knocked out quite quickly. And they didn't really know much about it. They didn't really know what they were really writing about. As you know, I mean, you're from Coventry. I mean, they wrote this song in Coventry, and they would. And they weren't that sort of tuned in, apparently, to the wider significance of what they kind of heard about it.
Yes.
They'd heard about Nelson Mandela, wrote this song, and it absolutely caught fire and went around the world, and particularly in Africa. Apparently, and so there were, and it became exactly the song you're talking about, and it and it sort of it binds people together. I do appreciate that.
And I mean, for example, when you were talking there about a song that's pointing its finger, one of the greatest for me songs of this nature is Common People by
it's a
Pulp.
brilliant song.
You see, and I can,
brilliant song.
But in every word of that, Jarvis Cocker is pointing his finger.
Yeah, I know, but it's...
So, I mean, because... what I would say is that basically we're talking about good songs and bad songs. That some songs get adopted, but actually they're quite rubbish.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a Manic Street Preachers fan, not because of their preaching, but because I don't hear any melody. I don't hear any, I don't hear any interest.
No.
But so
I don't particularly want to sort of go through kind of slagging off bands that I don't like. I mean, it's just not, it's not really. I'd much rather talk about stuff I like, but it's just, but it's just, for instance, a couple of songs on here they just sort of lead you in a slightly less obvious way, but somebody, or you tell a story. We started off the conversation by talking about Journey's End, and I think one of the reasons why Journey's End is such a powerful play is because precisely because it wasn't written as an anti-war play, that you are witnessing actually somebody who wasn't anti it. He was anti the death of his friends. He was anti, but he wasn't making a political point about the war. He was just writing what he experienced, and he was writing about his own personal experiences of the war. And then you draw from that this devastating, because from our perspective, and it's all the more sad and harrowing and politically potent, I think, because he's not. He's not. There's another nice story about. Ken Kesey was, Ken Kesey. He wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and he was involved in that sort of counter-culture, the acid culture of the late 60s. And he was invited to a rally in Washington around the time of the civil rights movement. It's a huge rally, and he was a bit of a hero in this movement. And he was invited to make a speech in front of the thousands of people. And he saw he couldn't hear what they were saying, but he saw on the stage all of the anti-war speakers. He couldn't hear what they were saying, but their language, their body language, was all pointing their fingers. It was all aggressive. And he realized it's all the same. All that angry, hateful, aggressive energy. And he refused to go on. He said, I'm not taking part in it, because it's just the same. It's the same energy. It's this macho, masculine, angry, hateful, we're going to get you, pointing the finger, yeah, and everybody whipping themselves. It's all the same stuff. People get hurt. That's how missiles get fired. That's how wars start.
And I understand exactly the logic behind that, but is it also not true that sometimes I mean, on the first series of Agitpop, we had all the three politicians who were standing in the election in the Cotswold constituency, and the Liberal guy came on, a really nice guy. But basically what he said was we should all be nice to each other. And I didn't find that a particularly credible political standpoint, that actually we're talking about power being abused and that it has to be fought. I mean, one of my problems with that whole hippie notion of we have to do it ourselves first, that if we all become nice, the world will become nice, is that it denies the realities of power.
It's a really, really. I mean, you're not going to solve any of this.
No,
but you know, you say hippie, and I say replace hippie with Gandhi, or replace hippie with Quaker, and you're talking, and you give it a bit more depth and substance when you replace the word hippie with those terms, because they represent the same thing.
True, and Gandhi, you know, I'm a great admirer of the non-violent civil disobedience movement, which I think this Occupy movement is a, you know, a modern similar equivalent to it. But in fact, you know, what Gandhi did was put people in front of violence. You know, it wasn't hippie, let's all be nice. He, you know, took people, marched up against armies, and people were beaten and killed. So, as you know, I absolutely
you had him on the show,
appreciate,
didn't you?
Who, Gandhi?
Yeah.
Well, we're talking to his agent, and we're seeing what we can do about getting Gandhi on the show. Yeah, we did have
Ben Kingsley.
We did have Ben Kingsley on the show. Yeah, we did. Yeah, who was Gandhi, and one of the most convincing psychopaths I've ever seen on the screen. So
there you are.
Not bad, eh? So let's move on to the next song. Now, we haven't had this on the show. It is one of my favourites, I have to say, and this is "Dirty Old Town" by the Pogues.
I met my love by the gasworks wall. Dreamed a dream by the old canal. I kissed my girl by the factory wall. Dirty old town, dirty old town. Clouds are drifting across the moon. Cats are prowling on their beat. Springs a girl from the streets at night. Dirty old town, dirty old town. The smoky wind, dirty old town, dirty old town. I'm gonna make me a picture back, shining steel
met my love by the gasworks wall. Dreamed a dream by the old canal. I kissed my girl by the factory wall. Dirty old town, dirty old town, dirty old town, dirty old town.
And there it is, Dirty Old Town by the Pogues. What a great band and what a great song. So, how and why does that mean so much to you?
The Pogues meant a lot to me because in the when I was in the 80s, when I was at school and leaving school, they were sort of, you know, they were a legendary force, and there were these parties that used to happen, which I never went to, but I heard about them. I knew various people who'd been to them at squats and things, and there was that whole movement, you know, that was sort of counter Thatcher and very much. It seemed to be very polarised then. Things seemed very. You're either on one side or the other, in a way that everything now seems so grey. Also, everybody's talking about the detail, and there seemed to be this huge sort of movement of consensus politics that is very disenfranchising, I think.
Yeah, because there's no ideology.
No, you're just getting on with the practical.
Yeah.
How do you sort things out? Well, you know, that everybody seems to agree on the. But anyway, but then in the 80s, when I was becoming politically aware, you know, it was very polarised, and the Pogues definitely represented the side that I wanted to be on.
Yeah, I mean they I mean, I saw them once at Kilburn High Road at Kilburn Town Hall, actually, and poor old what's-his-face was...
Shane McGowan.
Shane McGowan was much the worse for wear, as he often was, and no doubt
Still going strong.
still is. Yeah, he's still alive. Yeah. It is a miracle that he's still alive, and that he can still eat. Although he did get some new teeth, I think, didn't he, Shane?
Did he?
But Ewan McCall, who wrote that song, was, you know, our Woody Guthrie for, you know, not our Woody Guthrie, he was our Pete Seeger. Ewan McCall was our Pete Seeger.
Yeah.
He was he was a very, very important. Dudley Sutton, who was on this show, knew Ewan McCall.
Really?
And Ewan McCall was very, very important to the left generally throughout the 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
I mean, I recently heard some of his radio ballads, and in fact, that song came from one of the very earliest ones of these, from a play in 1949 called Landscape with Chimneys. So Ewan McCall, the radio ballads were these things where he would go and record working men and women generally of the north. He'd go into cotton factories and what have you, railway stations, and other places, record the thoughts and comments and the life of these people, and then he would write songs about that and then put the two together. So there was this really weird form that he invented and no one else has picked up or carried on with, called the radio ballad, where you got this sort of docudrama with songs, and they're quite incredible.
Right, yeah.
They're amazing. They're amazing historical artifacts, if nothing else, because there's these recordings of ordinary people, which you know, the media tends to concentrate on what we laughingly call celebrities these days, or politicians and people with power, and very rarely talks to ordinary folk, as it were. So these things are quite extraordinary to listen to. They're fabulous.
Folk music is. I really want to like folk music, but I just can't. And and there's something that happens when you get folk singers, particularly male ones, singing in this country. I think it's different.
Yeah.
It's different in America. Well, it's different in every country. Obviously, by definition, has their own folk tradition. But modern folk music, and they all seem to start singing with a sort of a nasal twang.
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
you got to get all around my hat.
And they start
I
singing
will
about fair
wear.
maidens and all this.
Yeah,
kind
yeah, yeah.
And it's an alternative. It's a kind of a parallel world that they live in that seems to have no relation to the world that I recognise. But I think real folk music. I mean, folk music has to have sort of socially relevant lyrics, doesn't it? That's the point. That normally tells a story. And I suppose that in a way that's what these songs is what you've asked for here are songs that are saying something.
Yes.
Have something to say and
And to say something about things other than love.
Other than love,
Because most pop songs
they are and
say stuff about love all the time, and it's not an insignificant
it's
issue
the
in most people's
important
lives.
thing to sing about,
Of
probably.
course. And all we need is love, according to
That's
Paul
very
McCartney,
bloody true.
and he should know. So songs that say something about the world rather than just relationships is really what this show's about, and
Yeah.
and what those people are about. I agree. Folk music isn't my thing, I have to say, but I do admire people like Pete Seeger, Peggy Seeger, who was Ewan McCall's wife, I think.
Jonathan Livingston Seeger.
Yeah, the Seeger, boom, da-da-da-da-da-da. And but I did admire those guys because they were doing something, and I admire the passion of the people. The famous moment when Dylan, in fact, in Manchester.
It was several moments. I mean,
But the famous Judas moment on the album, which was in Manchester again, when he went electric.
Yeah.
And, for me, the electric Dylan is the only one really worth listening to. I mean, I like electric Dylan, but folk Dylan doesn't quite do it for me. But
Oh, no. I mean, no, I know that I've got that album. It's absolutely brilliant. I mean, on the first half of it is the acoustic. He does an acoustic set. Then there's an interval. Then he comes back and does the electric set. And he was and this we're talking about insufferable self-righteousness. I mean, the folk movement having this. How dare they kind of say, "Oh, you belong to us," and you've got to do things our way. And so, if you notice, if you ever do listen to the acoustic side of it, his diction is perfect. His phrasing is immaculate, and it's almost as if he say, "You want to hear how a folk song should be sung perfectly? I'll do it for you." It's absolutely beautiful. It's perfect, and which makes the contrast when he kicks in with the band after that absolutely even more powerful. But they're both brilliant. I mean, the great thing about folk music is their relationship to songs as well, and that they pass songs around. So "Dirty Old Town" was written by Ewan McCall, but it's been covered by dozens of people. The Dubliners did everyone thinks, well, not everyone, a lot of people think the song's about Dublin or Derry or wherever, but as you said, it's actually about Salford. But Christy Moore is another hero of mine, and he talks about just sort of, you don't own a song. You write one and you give it to people, and you borrow theirs and they borrow yours, and you all do different things with a song. I love that.
Yeah, and I think the folk tradition do that more. I mean, people do cover rock and pop songs, but the folk tradition were always much more relaxed about that.
Much.
Well, in fact, not relaxed. It was part of the ideology. It was part of the way of thinking. Okay, so let's go on to the fourth song now. I've written this down and I can't read it. The word that
maketh murder.
The word that maketh murder.
By P.J. Harvey.
By P.J. Harvey. Here we go.
I've seen and done things I want to forget. I've seen soldiers fall like lumps of meat, blown and shot out beyond belief. Arms and see a woman's face. Instead of the words that gather pace, the words that make good murder. These are 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 the words.
These are the words that make murder. These are the words that make murder.
I've seen them done things I want to forget.
Words that make murder.
I've seen a corporal whose nerves were shot,
Words that make murder.
climbing behind a fierce gun sun.
Words that make murder.
I've seen flies swarming everyone.
Words that make murder.
Soldiers fell like lumps of meat.
Words that make murder.
These are the words of these that lingering stuck. Flies swarming everyone over the whole summit peak. Flesh quivering in the heat. This was something else again. Our fear cannot explain the words that make the words that make murder.
What if I take my problem to the United Nations?
What if I take my problem to the United Nations? What if I take my problem to the United Nations? What if I take my problem to the United Nations? What if I take my problem to the United Nations? What if I take my problem to the United Nations?
What if I take my problem to the United Nations?
What if I take my problem to the United Nations?
And there we are, the words that maketh murder by PJ Harvey from this year's album Let England Shake. So I don't know PJ Harvey very well, so tell me about this.
She's been around for ages, and she lives down in Dorset, and she just makes very sort of intelligent, slightly, I suppose you'd say offbeat records. And this one, the new one, is very much infused with war. The theme of war. It won the Mercury Prize, and this song is just brilliant. I mean, it's just lyrically, it's brilliant. It ends with what if I take my problem to the United Nations, and that goes on and on. That's the repeat, and obviously sung with heaps of irony. But
Yeah.
I was thinking, what?
Which is a line from Summertime Blues
That's right.
by Eddie Cochran.
That's right, and in fact she credits him.
Does she?
Yeah, in the album, yeah.
Yeah.
And he was happy to.
I bet he was,
for
yeah.
that, yeah. But
Take
so,
the problem to
I
the
d-
United Nations.
yeah.
That's it.
No, and she's just great. And she lives down in Dorset, and this whole album was just recorded in a small seaside church down there, apparently. And I like her thing. And I was thinking about what to bring today, and it was apart from that, you've got to choose some good songs, some good records. And anyway, and Sophie Ward, who's is a really lovely woman and actress who was in Land Girls, was helping me along the way a little bit, and recommended this one. And actually, I had listened to it, and she said she's going to be listening to it. So hello, Sophie.
Hello, Sophie.
And so that one was for her. A very good choice. Fantastic song.
Yeah, Land Girls is made by some people who I know up at BBC Birmingham, the Drama Village up there, and that's you're doing now the second series. You're in it.
No, it's third actually. Yes, that starts tomorrow.
And that's the third series of the show, and the second you're in, or the
No, I haven't been in it before. No,
No,
so
no.
yeah. So
this is the first one you're in.
Yeah.
And that starts tomorrow.
Yeah, all week. Yeah,
On daytime.
on daytime I think 2:30, and then I think it's repeated on Sunday evenings in January or February. Or something.
Yeah. That's right. But it did very, very well, didn't it?
Yeah.
Because it was a daytime drama. I remember when I was up there, they were developing that, and it was doing, and then they put it out in daytime, and it got the evening repeat, and
Yeah.
it's been very, very successful.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, the problem is that it's done to a very, very low budget.
Made to a daytime budget.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
And but the problem is that they do it.
yeah.
That's the problem.
Yes,
that it
yes.
looks like
Yeah.
like it's got 10 times the budget that
Yes.
it's got. And so therefore you're going to have people say, well, look, they can do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Look at that. They make it look
'Cause
like
it's
make it look like a movie.
Yeah, because it's a period drama.
Yeah.
That looks
costs more,
looks
normally.
amazing. Yeah, that
Yeah.
costs more because of everything else, the costumes and all the rest of it. Looks great, and as you say, shot on a daytime budget, so that's problematic for everybody earning a living going forward, isn't it?
It is and it isn't. I mean, there is always. I hope people do realise, but it's an incredible tribute to the people who make it. I mean, that they pull it off. I mean, it does look. I think it's great. I mean, from what I've seen.
I mean, for me, one of the greatest cultural tragedies of my lifetime was the closing of Pebble Mill, because I was a Midland boy from Coventry originally, and Pebble Mill was the studio. There was a series called Second City First when I was growing up, and Pebble Mill was, the local news came from there.
Yeah.
And so for me, the aspiration was always to work at Pebble Mill. This was
And Pebble Mill at 1, they had that.
at Pebble Mill
yeah,
at
yeah.
1, they had the studio there. And so then when they closed it, and you drive past now, and it's just a sort of empty lot, because they knocked the building down. And I'm still quite sad about that.
Yeah.
I think it was a terrible thing to do, really. Totally unnecessary.
Well, I think it's an interesting time because there's there's a whole load of dramas going up to Manchester, isn't it? I think, and the BBC is is decentralising generally. So, and Birmingham's got this. I think they're being given more drama, and so I don't know. I'm not the person to ask, but I mean, I think things are changing.
They're decentralising but centralising. They've moved Casualty being human out of Bristol to Cardiff.
Mm.
So if you see what I mean, these shows have been in Bristol for. Casualty's been in Bristol for 30 odd years, and they've just moved it to Cardiff. So they're sort of decentralising but centralising, i.e. the stuff that was sort of spread out throughout the country is now being focused into Manchester, Cardiff.
But less London, though, I think.
Less London is good, but I don't think centring it in Manchester and Cardiff is necessarily, you just create two other centres there. But anyway,
Yeah.
they don't give a monkey's what you and I think about it. That's for sure.
No.
Yeah. So, so how were you? Where were you politically around the time when when Blair was taking us into the Iraq War?
Where was I?
Because presumably this PJ Harvey album is a sort of reflection on the 10 years that have gone on since 2011.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, I will put my hands up and say that when the war against Saddam started, I believed it, and I thought, well, this there had been obviously there had been genocidal acts committed by Saddam. He was an absolute monster. There had been weapons of mass destruction, and he wasn't cooperating, and there was a fear that things were escalating, and I thought, personally, it was pretty much a just cause. where do you draw the line? I mean, do you never ever intervene? Even if, you know, somebody's, you know, on a bus, somebody talked to me the other day, saw somebody being shot on a bus in Hackney, and nobody did a thing. I mean, obviously not, because the guy had a gun. But that there is that culture in London now where you see things happening on the street and nobody does a thing. And you know, in terms of international relations, when you've got somebody, you know, 2 or 3 hours flight away, as in, you know, Libya, and there are people on the ground who are in danger of being murdered, do you stand back and do nothing, or do you intervene? And I thought, and I clearly, I think I've changed my view now with hindsight, but at the time, I thought, no, hang on a second. This looks to me like a just cause, but you know, it was a mess.
It was a mess. But the sort of other side to that, certainly what I would say about the Iraq War, that whether or not it was just to take out Saddam Hussein, and people would say, well, yeah, all right, we can't take out everybody, but we can take out Saddam Hussein. But that's not the problem with our foreign policy. Our foreign policy, historically, and America is worse than us, if that's possible, is extremely hypocritical. So we claim to be the defenders of democracy, and yet all over the world we support tyrants. All these tyrants, including Gaddafi, who are being brought down now, have at some stage in the past been supported by America especially, and us.
Yeah.
And so it's not just a question of, oh, well, we had the opportunity to take a tyrant down. The thing was that Saddam was in power because we'd aided and sold him weapons 10 years previously. So it's not just a question of yeah, we can't deal with it, we're not the police, you know, we can't police everywhere and blah, 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 but we had an opportunity to do here, which is an argument that I heard from some in the Labour Party. It's not just that. If that was the case, I can sort of buy that. But it's not the case. The case is we actually support and bolster these people who are, you know...
Yeah, well, you know, when Robin Cook became Foreign Secretary, he used the phrase ethical foreign policy, and he rued those words, and because it implied that foreign policy previously had been unethical, and
which it undoubtedly had,
and secondly, he'd set himself a very high bar, and of course, realpolitik isn't black and white, and politics is exactly the negotiation of the middle of the grey areas.
Well, you see, I have a problem with that. Because realpolitik, basically, as far as I can see, means we'll do whatever we like when we like, and that we'll tell the population, you know, I don't think there's any doubt that the American population, if they actually knew what the Americans had been doing in Nicaragua and all over.
Well, what about, for instance, what about Britain's attitude to Saudi Arabia at the moment? What would you do? Well, how would you, if you were Foreign Secretary or the Prime Minister, how would you conduct diplomatic relations with Saudi Arabia?
Well,
knowing that they have control over, they could bring us to our knees.
Well, I don't think we need to be in bed with them in the way that we are. Again, we are so intimately linked with the Saudi Arabia.
They don't like it when we say things bad about them.
No, they don't. And Tony Blair, you know, stopped a legal investigation in this country.
Yeah.
He stopped it. Because of
so where would you draw the line?
Well, I certainly wouldn't have stopped that court case. I think it was an outrageous thing to happen.
But there would be lines that you wouldn't cross, because you knew that if you were to cross those lines, you would be clobbered so hard, and it would be the medicine that you would have to swallow would be so painful,
well,
that it wouldn't be worth it. And that's real politique.
And without principle, we have nothing. Without principle, we end up with Blair lying to these people, to the British people, taking us into an illegal war.
What do you think his motives were then, when you say without principle? Because I don't buy this. I don't buy that Blair didn't have any principles. I don't buy that he was some sort of power-crazy megalomaniac.
Well, I don't know if he had any principles. He certainly didn't behave principled. That doesn't make any sense, but you know what I mean. He didn't behave with principle. The government did, you know, we lost a we lost a Director General of the BBC who was very highly regarded at the time over an allegation that a document was changed, which subsequently it turns out, as we all knew at the time, had been. The government behaved in an extremely anti-democratic manner. The 10 days up to the vote are an extraordinary story that I've been trying to get somebody to tell for quite some time. The 10 days, the things that the Labour government did to their own MPs in order to get that vote were disgraceful, were appalling.
All government,
the
Tories have just done it, they all do it.
So we go, oh yeah, well, they all do, everybody does it, and oh, it's terrible and all of this. And then at the same time, we make statements about high principle. And I don't, that takes us to the Stalinist approach of the ends justify the means, and I don't believe that the ends justify the means. I don't believe that. I think that if the ends are corrupt and if the means are corrupt, the ends will end up being corrupted. Mm-hmm. And I think our problem is that we have accepted.
So what are you saying was corrupt?
Well, if there'd been a vote in the House of Parliament that people had been allowed to vote to their conscience
on the war,
we wouldn't have gone to war, or we wouldn't have had the vote to go to war in Parliament. In order to get the vote,
but Parliament that was a courtesy. I mean that was
It was, and he could have done it anyway.
Yeah.
He could have done it anyway, but I'm not sure he could have survived if he'd done it without that vote.
He did it to get democratic legitimacy.
Yeah, exactly, and it wasn't. And that my point is, he did it to get democratic legitimacy, but it wasn't democratic legitimacy because he used bribery, he used people's private lives, he promised people jobs, he threatened people not to get jobs. There was it wasn't about having an argument with the MPs and saying, well, let's talk about the points of principle. It was, you will vote with us or we will release to the paper about your mistress and all the rest of it.
But was it, I can't remember the actual, was it a close vote? I don't think it was.
Extremely close. It was extremely close. On the day of the vote, they thought they were going to lose it. I mean, this was pulled together in the 10 days before the vote. So, and that's just one example of what Blair did. Blair's, the way they approached the press, what they did, the biggest public demonstration in British history was entirely ignored, as if, and yet then Blair tries to claim democratic legitimacy. There clearly was no democratic legitimacy. So the issue for me...
That's what Papandreou is trying to do now.
The issue for me with Blair is not whether or not he had principle about whether to fight the war. He may or may not have done. I mean, I see a vainglorious man in Blair. I see vainglory in him, and I still see it now, the way he behaves now. But, that's just my perception. But what is not just my perception, because it's a matter of history, is the way that he manipulated the democratic process to get that war. And that, to me, is morally bankrupt for a democratic politician.
I don't know if it's more... I mean, the thing is, all governments employ dirty tricks. I'm not saying that, I'm not arguing for them, or that's just the way it is, and I think, I suppose that the broader point is about war, and this is the most interesting thing. And we talked about, and we mentioned Gandhi earlier on, and I think, and I don't want to argue for realpolitik. I mean, that's not what I mention it because that is the reality, but that's not where I live.
And the reason I picked you up on it is because the argument about realpolitik is often made as if it can't be changed. But the history of the last 200 years in the West is that actually a lot of things that were perceived to be impossible to change have been changed. And in fact, I would say that the government now has to behave in a far more moral way than it did 200 years. 200 years ago there were rotten boroughs, there were MPs who had no constituencies, or they employed all their 13 constituents were actually their own employees, and the whole thing was, had no legitimacy whatsoever. And I think in that 200 years, the system has been changed and moved bit by bit, brick by brick. So that's my problem with realpolitik is that it sort of puts an end to the debate. It sort of says, well, that's the way it is, we can't change it, so we're stuck with it. And I don't think that's not how progress is made, as far as I...
No. What I'm saying is that if you polarize things into black and white, I mean, I use the example of Saudi Arabia, and that there is almost nothing about the way that Saudi Arabia behave as a state that I agree with. Almost nothing, and yet, we have sort of profound, deep connections to that country.
We do, and I think that's where my problem lies. It's not that we're neutral to Saudi Arabia. We're not neutral to Saudi Arabia. We are in bed with that regime in a quite, intimate way, and that's my problem. But we're going to run out of time.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to move on to your next song now.
The nice little
Getting
song.
at it there. And this next song is Mayfair by Nick Drake.
Mayfair's strange in the morning light. Mayfair's strange in the summer night. Mayfair strangest in the afternoon. Mayfair stretching far above, full of fame but lacking love. Could it be we see the Mayfair moon? Mayfair strange across the park, in the day or in the dark. There's no need to walk or even run. Mayfair faces clean and nice, but beauty here is cold as ice. Could it be we see the Mayfair sun? Mayfair strange at every hour, hidden frowns of mystic power, starry heights and golden throne, down below you're on your own. Mayfair strange for passers-by, sights of wonder for the eye. Could it be that they'll pass by again? Mayfair calling far and near, for even trees are wealthy here. Could it be we hear Mayfair rain? Mayfair strange in the morning light, Mayfair strange in the summer night, Mayfair strangest in the afternoon. Mayfair stretching far above, full of fame but lacking love. Could it be we see the Mayfair moon?
And there we are. That's Mayfair by Nick Drake. Tell me a bit about that then.
Well, Nick Drake obviously isn't a political songwriter, and and lots of people came to Nick Drake sort of later on, and he was sort of famously wasn't famous when he was alive, but and I think only there were two or three albums that he made, and they're beautiful, beautiful little complicated, delicate songs that he sung, and they seem to really go in your head and stay there. But and this one just stuck because when I go to London, which I do sort of regularly for work, I often go to Paddington, or if I get the bus, I get off at Marble Arch, and I often walk. And when I walk through Mayfair, and Mayfair is a really weird place. And so all through this, I've been, and often go sometimes go with my sons, and they look around and they love cars, and they say, Dad, there are so many rich people in London. And you just see there are Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Rolls Royces, absolutely, it's like every car. And all this stuff about a recession and the world going bonkers and financial markets crashing. When you walk through Mayfair today, yesterday, or tomorrow, it's like nothing has happened. The wealth is unbelievable, and it does your head
Dom,
in.
we're all in it together. So we're told we're all in it together.
Yeah, well, it's a very big sign, but it just does your head in. And I think there's a lovely lyric in there, full of fame but lacking love, and it's just great. And you know, and it's what we were saying earlier on about not being, you know, it's not overtly political. It's not really. It's just a gentle, but actually underneath it, there's very sharp observation, and it's very dry.
I mean, I was looking. For something else, I was looking at some statistics recently, and the average wage in the UK is about £26,000, the average. But the median wage, which is the wage at which half the population earn less and half the population earn more, is about 16,000 a year. So that 50% of the population earn less than £16,000 a year. Obviously, that's not per household. That's
be careful when you get into statistics. But
that's obviously you could, if two people were earning 16,000, they'd be earning 32,000 in the household. But nonetheless,
it's,
you know, that 50% of the population earning less than 16,000 a year are not going to be buying Lamborghinis and
no,
Lotuses and all the rest of it.
No, and
or even Ford Fiestas.
And people, you know, I was thinking the other day about terminology, and somebody, who was it? Somebody used the term delegitimizing, and they were talking about the Occupy London people, and they were talking about them being delegitimized, about their arguments being delegitimized, and it's a trick to delegitimize your opponents, one way or another, and in a funny kind of way, you did it earlier on by using the word hippie. Because subliminally what that does, it delegitimizes any argument that is attached to that word. And it's done with actors, they're called lovies, and so that delegitimizes any argument that an actor cares to make, because that, you know, it taints them with that, you know, whatever that, the connotations of that word. And so delegitimizing arguments is a way that is a technique that is used to maintain your power. And you know, and one of the arguments one of the methods of delegitimizing a lot of the arguments flying around at the moment, and what we're talking about, is by talking about the politics of envy, and that phrase, the politics of envy, and you invoke that word envy, and you're saying, therefore, it's that what your feelings are about wealth and about ways of changing things and the inequality and the gap and the statistics that you talked about, they say it's the politics of envy, so therefore it doesn't count.
Yes.
Because it's envious. It's envy.
Yes.
Actually, it's disgusting that how any human being can line their pockets with hundreds of thousands of pounds a year, while there are people who can barely scratch enough to eat in our country, is disgusting. Now, I was on holiday earlier this year in Greece, and we were in this beautiful bay, and right slap bang in the middle of the bay was a yacht, and because of the internet, we were able to look it up, and you can hire this yacht for, I think it was $200,000 a week or something stupid, and in the course of looking up this yacht, we discovered that Abramovich's new yacht is worth over $1 billion or pound, I can't remember. You could call that the politics of envy for feeling negatively about that. But at that precise moment that we were contemplating Abramovich's £1 billion yacht, the Greek economy was collapsing to the tune of about one man's yacht.
And
everybody, a bit more than that, but you know what I mean? We're in the same ballpark. And how has that happened? Now that system is wrong.
Yeah. You don't.
That's not envy.
No, you don't have to convince me, Dom, of that. Yeah. I'm hearing you. But
my argument is about terminology.
Yes,
really.
I understand. Your argument is about that delegitimizing, that rhetorical device of reducing, and language,
and sort of also the politics of language is really interesting. And people talk about it's political correctness. Well, hang on a second. Political correctness. What does that mean? And like Ricky Gervais is coming to flack at the moment for using the word "mong."
Yes.
I mean, language is very, very significant part of any political conversation, and I think Ricky Gervais is utterly wrong.
Yes,
and
no, I agree entirely, and I agree with this thing about language, and I agree with the way that that forces that oppose or express dissent are often delegitimized by mainstream media. One of the phrases that really gets my goat is the usual suspects.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go.
Well, so and so is putting up a certain thing. Oh yeah, but it's just the usual suspects saying the same old thing. Well, maybe the reason they're saying the same old thing is because it needs saying, and nobody's changed. You know, the debate goes on.
Yeah.
So no, I'm entirely with you, and I think Mayfair, as you say, is an extraordinary place, even more so than other areas, because there's many areas of London which are extremely wealthy, Hampstead, but Mayfair in particular, I suppose, because
I want to live in Hampstead. I don't want to live in Mayfair.
Yeah, that's true. Because there's so much international money, I suppose, in Mayfair and it's so ostentatious. There's no.
Yeah, even the pavements are different.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so ostentatiously wealthy, Mayfair, but as he says, no love, because it's also got this sort of dead feel to it. Yeah. That there's actually no life going on there because nobody walks anywhere because they're being driven in limos and blah blah blah. It is an extraordinary place, and to that extent, when they say the politics of envy, I don't envy these people, these things, frankly, personally. I don't want a Lotus or a, I'm not particularly interested in any of that stuff.
Yeah.
It doesn't. So the issue for me isn't one of envy. I don't look at their life and go, oh my God, wouldn't it be fantastic to have £1 billion yacht?
No,
I'm not interested in it.
No.
But so it's got nothing to do with envy. It's to do, as you say, with injustice. That my children don't have the same benefits as their children, and they were just born there. You know what I mean? For me, that's at the central core of it.
Yeah.
I mean, with Abramovich, it's also that he, basically nicked it all. But
Well, I mean,
apparently.
Well, no, he was the great Russian sell-off. It was the what happened in our country in the 80s with the sell-off of the utilities and the nationalised.
Yes.
It was the same there, but he just got a great slice of oil, nationalised oil wealth.
He certainly did. My God, he got. I mean, we were talking about this last week a little bit about football. That I think football is an example of where football is a market failure. That footballers are so rare and now are so expensive that actually football clubs can't make money, and they have to have billionaires who can afford yachts of 1.1 billion and all the rest of it to come in and basically throw money away as a hobby, a rich man's hobby, because actually, the market is bringing the whole thing down.
It's an interesting analogy because, to use a football club as a sort of a metaphor for society, because actually, the real owners of the football club, are the supporters.
Yes.
They're the football club.
Yes.
If you take them away, there isn't a football club.
Yeah, the football players come and go, the managers come and go, the owners come and go.
The
fans say the same.
The fans say the same, and they have they have this sort of this love for their club,
Yes.
and but that could it's a mad situation. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, and sort of when the first sort of really big transfer fees started happening, and your jaws would drop. You sort of go up at these huge figures. I'd never ever imagined it could become what it's become.
Well,
I mean, it's unsustainable.
I mean, Rooney went on strike to increase his pay from £180,000 a week to £210,000 a week.
I know, but you know what? I don't. It's not really that. I don't really care that much about footballers' wages. It's kind of a sideshow. I mean,
absolutely, it is politically. It's an entire sideshow. I think what it does illustrate, though, is that that the perspective is, for him to get his knickers in a twist over going from £180,000 a week to 210, it's insane.
Yeah.
It's crazy. The whole, that
insane,
at the top of the pay, both in show business, because you hear this, in show business as well. You have people, Jonathan Ross and all that. I mean, earning money that is, extraordinary, and yet actors now are being paid, you know, a third of what they were paid in the mid-80s in cash terms. You know, I mean, I used to get £3 an episode doing Casualty as an actor in the 80s, and now I get 800 quid. You know, I mean, it's literally, and yet at the other end of the scale, people are earning, you know, 5 million, 10. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's have your next song then.
Well, let's play. I want to play "It's All Right, Ma" by Bob Dylan, and because we're running out of time, I just want to guarantee that we get this in. It's the live version of it, which is in fact half the time, half the studio version. I think this is one of the most sort of brilliant things ever put on tape.
"It's All Right, Ma," Bob Dylan.
Darkness at the break of noon, shadows even the silver spoon, the handmaid played the child's balloon, eclipses both the sun and moon. To understand you know too soon, there is no sense in trying. Pointed threads they bluff with scorn, the suicide remarks are torn, when the fool's gold mouthpiece a hollow horn, plays wasted words, proves the one that he not busy being born, is a busy dying. Temptation's page flies out the door. You finally find yourself at war. Watch waterfalls of pity roar. Feel the moment and like before, you discover that there's just be one more person crying. So don't fear if you hear that foreign sound in your ear. It's alright, Ma, I'm only sighing. Some want victory, some down for private reasons, greed or small can be seen in the eyes of those that call and make all it should be killed to crawl, while others say don't hate nothing at all except hatred. Disillusioned words are like a bullet spark, as the human gods aim for the mark and make everything from toy guns that spark. The flesh-colored Christ that glow in the dark, easy to see without looking too far, not much is really sacred. While preachers preach of evil fates, teachers teach that knowledge waits can lead you to $100 plates. Goodness hides behind its gates, but even the President of the United States sometimes must have to stand naked. Though the rules of the road have been lodged, it's people's games you got to dodge. But it's alright, Ma, I can make it. Advertising signs they con you into thinking you're the one that can do what's never been done, that can win what's never been won. Meantime, life outside goes on around you. You lose yourself, you reappear. You suddenly find you got nothing to fear. Alone you stand with nobody near. When a trembling distant voice unclear startles your sleeping ears to hear someone thinks they really found you. Questioning your nerves is lit, yet you know there is no answer fit. You satisfied, sure you're not to quit. Keep it in your mind and not forget that it is not he or she or them or it that you belong to. And though the masters make the rules for the wise men and the fools, I got nothing more to live up to. Old lady judges watch people in pairs, limited in sex they dare. The push fake malls, insult and stare. Money doesn't talk, it swears obscenity. Who really cares? Propaganda all is phony. While in that defend what they cannot see, with a killer's pride security, it blows the minds most bitterly. For them that think death's honesty won't fall upon them naturally, life sometimes must get lonely. My eyes collide head-on with stuffed graveyards, false goals I scuff at pettiness, which plays so rough, walk upside down inside handcuffs, kick my legs to crash it off, say I'll rage, I've had enough, what else can you show me? And if my thought dreams could be seen, they'd probably put my head in a guillotine. But it's alright, Mo, it's life and life only.
There it is, all right. All right, Ma, I'm Only Bleeding by Bob Dylan. So tell us about this song.
It's just genius, and every single lyric is sharp as a razor, and it cuts through. And this particular version is almost half the length of the studio version, and he's absolutely just blisteringly angry in it, and it just as a performance, as just the energy of it is incredible, and lyrically it's brilliant, and it's poetic, and you know what we were talking about earlier on about lyrics being you know, he is symbolic and poetic and complicated, and yet there's these visceral points just come through, and these images just pile one on top of another on top of another, and you're never quite sure what his stand is in any of all of this necessarily. You just get these images and these feelings and these things that provoke different reactions in you, and it's just and given, and also the performance of this version of it it's just like it's like being thumped all the way through. It's absolutely brilliant. And
what do you think he's angry about?
Everything. I mean, consumerism, politicians, relationships, war, absolutely everything. And he raises it all up, and he you know, fantastic sort of contradictions and juxtapositions, you know, and just it hurls them all, you know, into the song. Yeah, it's just a very, very angry song, but it's not, but it's contained within the most. I mean, when you look at the lyrics written down, in the most exquisite poetry, and it's just genius, absolutely. If anybody ever doubts that Dylan's a genius, I just play them that.
The thing listening to it as well it doesn't sound like Dylan, and there's quite a few Dylan tracks around that don't sound like Dylan. It's quite strange the way his voice can, you know, everybody has a sort of, you know, a pastiche version of what Dylan sounds like.
Yeah. I think he's a brilliant singer.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And in that, he doesn't sound like that pastiche version of Dylan at all. He sounds, you know, totally different, and a completely different voice. His ability to reinvent himself. I mean, one of the things that interests me about in this book that we're going to be dealing with over the next 2 weeks, 33 Revolutions per Minute, was there's this whole section on Dylan, and about how he quite quickly tired of being a protest singer, and tried to stop doing that.
I love that in him. I love his contrariness as well, and you know, and it's that thing, you know, that when you feel a mass move, when everybody's in agreement about something, the alarm bells start to ring. You think, hang on a second, this feels dangerous. And I think he has he has embodied that all his life, and just, you know, and gone out of his way to piss people off, and really doesn't like being appropriated for any cause. And no, he reacted against the. He didn't like being appropriated by the folk movement, by the political movement, by the anti-war movement, and so went his own way.
And he did, although still continued to write, you know, songs which were some of his later stuff, not later in the 90s, but I mean his later stuff in the 70s, which are not political in the sense that you know, the times they are changing. Although the times they are changing actually is sort of incoherent, really, in terms of politics. It's sort of
that's got with God on our side, isn't it? Is that times they are changing? But yeah.
But you know what I mean. And he then would write like The Boxer and, you know, stuff that was, you know, had that common people feel to it. You know, the Jarvis Cocker song had that sort of very specific thing, but the energy was still in it. You know, the power of it was still in it.
I think one of the dangers of political conversation and political opinion is putting the world to rights. You know, is having the answer for everybody else, and it can. And I just don't think. I think that's, you know, at worst it's dangerous. I mean, but actually in reality most of the time it's just boring, and I think what's always most interesting is the personal, and I think that to be personally revealing and honest, and engage in a sort of relationship of your own, of what you see directly in front of you, and how you behave in that sphere is far more interesting and important, really. And I think that Dylan, and then you can take from that, you can extrapolate outwards. But then I think that, you know, Dylan's at his most interesting when he's doing that. And there's politics in there anyway. And but having said that, I mean, a song like With God on Our Side is blisteringly powerful anti-war song. It's an absolutely amazing song, but did you see is it Don't Look Back when poor old Donovan comes in and says he'd like to sing a song for Dylan, and he does, and they'll go, that's great, and then Dylan gets on and sings one for him, and it's Desolation Row. And Donovan's face just goes, oh shit. But, anyway.
Not in the same league, no, I don't think. No. Okay, so we've got 2 tracks left to play now. We're going to play the next one now, which is Meat is Murder by the Smiths.
could be him crying. Closer comes the screaming night. This beautiful creature must die. This beautiful creature must die. A death for no reason, and death for no reason is murder. And the flesh you so fancifully fry is not succulent, tasty or kind. It's death for no reason, and death for no reason is murder. And the cart that you cart with a smile is murder. And the turkey you festively slice is murder. Do you know how animals die? Kitchen aromas are very homely. It's not comforting, cheery or kind. It's sizzling blood and the unholy stench of murder. It's not natural, normal or kind. The flesh you so fancifully fry. The meat in your mouth as you savor the flavor of murder. No, 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 it's murder. No, 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 it's murder.
So there we are, Meat is Murder, the very famous Meat is Murder by the Smiths in the 80s. So did this have a big effect on you at the time?
I just thought we ought to play something, a song that we could all dance to.
And have a laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was a vegetarian for about 5 years, I suppose. I just did it to piss my parents off originally, obviously just to make meal times more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's obviously a very good motivating thing for any political position. But
absolutely.
I think the politics of food are really, really important. I think they're going to get more important, and I think that the thing is, I was always a vegetarian who loved meat, and a lot of vegetarians actually don't really like meat, but I really, really love meat. And when I finally started eating meat again, it was like putting nectar in my body. I just absolutely, I thought, you got welcome home, animal.
Yeah, I've got a friend who was a vegetarian throughout the second half of the 80s, partly as a result of this song. But he would always eat bacon sandwiches, and we would say to him, "What the hell's that about?" And he would say, "Well, I've got a philosophy which is I will only eat things that an otter would eat." And we said, "Well, but otters don't eat bacon sandwiches." He said, "Oh, but they would if they were offered one." As a rational argument, it didn't really stand up.
As a rational argument, that's as good as I've
That's as
heard.
good as you've ever heard, yeah.
No, my point is that I'd intellectualized an argument for not eating meat, and to the point that I was evangelistic about it, and I simply couldn't see any reason to eat meat, other than that I really wanted to. And anyway, I now eat meat, but occasionally those arguments surface in my conscience, and to be perfectly honest, I can't argue against them. There are some people who medically do need to eat meat, apparently, but apart from those very, very few people, the world can't sustain it. It's a luxury. Apart from the humanitarian, apart from the sort of animal rights issues, which I also agree with, which is what that song's about. I mean, just in terms of you know, food. You know, it takes 1 acre of land to grow the grain to feed so many people if you ate the grain, and on so many people, far fewer people to feed the cows.
Absolutely, and
the world can't support it. I mean,
no.
look at the population growth. It's just we can't do it. It's a luxury. A beef burger is an obscene luxury.
My own, I don't have a moral problem with eating meat, because most vegetarians ultimately make a moral argument, which is not, is not illegitimate. It's I understand where they're coming from, and I do think that, a chicken for £2 in Tesco's is obscene.
It is.
When the conditions that they've lived in, and when I was growing up in the 1960s, we were eating meat, but we weren't eating meat every day. A chicken was a big deal on a Sunday. The roast was a chicken, and now chicken is almost disposable.
Yeah, and you'd always get giblets in it, and you'd make
and you'd make your gravy and pie and all that.
All the leftovers.
That's right.
That whole culture of food has completely changed.
It's completely changed, and I think we don't pay the true price of meat.
No,
because if we were to rear these creatures in anything like humane conditions, you couldn't, if you go in, you can get a chicken, a medium-sized chicken for £2 or whatever it is, £2.50, and then you look at the organic alternative and it's £12. That's the real cost. So I absolutely don't think it's a good thing.
And even that in a supermarket isn't a real cost.
No,
because if you go to, there's a woman around here that we both know, Carol, who, and actually what it costs if you do it on a small holding, to get a decent size, it's about 25 quid.
Yes. That's
a lot of money.
And
that's what an animal costs.
That's what an animal costs if it's going to have anything like, if you resolve the issues of industrialized meat farming, then I don't have a problem with eating meat. So my problem is not with eating meat, it's with industrial farming methods, which are mind-bogglingly horrific.
But a lot of the deforestation in South America is because of meat.
Yes, absolutely. No, and the next thing I was going to say was that the main argument actually isn't a moral argument. As you say, it's an environmental argument, that actually we just can't sustain. The world can't sustain the amount of meat eating that the West indulges in. It just can't do it.
When I was at drama school, there was a girl there, and her dad was a pig farmer, and she's from Lancashire. And she said, "But Dom, if we all stopped eating meat tomorrow, where would all the pigs go?"
Yes.
And I did have this vision of these feral pigs.
Roaming, suddenly on
millions
their own.
of them,
Millions.
released from their battery farms.
Yeah.
I said, "Go on, make a life for yourself."
Well, if
I don't think that's going to be a problem.
No, I don't. I somehow don't think that'll be a problem, and I certainly think that the day they were going to make it illegal to eat meat, though, that would be huge Barbie, wouldn't it?
But it's an
as we
there
off.
was that huge Barbie, wasn't there? With foot and mouth, bloody
years ago. True. What a Barbie that would be, Jesus. Yeah, amazing. Yeah. But the interesting thing for me about that song, Meat is Murder, is that I know at least 3 or 4 people who became vegetarians almost directly as a result of that song. The Smiths never really did it for me. There was something about him.
Yeah.
Which irritated the feck out of me. Some of the songs, Girlfriend in a Coma is hilarious and fantastic, and there were other songs of his, but he was so
up himself,
and when he came back with that album last year, and I saw him on Jonathan Ross, and you just thought, oh, for goodness sake, so self-regarding.
At the time though, because you're a little bit older than me, but
10 years older, almost.
Well,
exactly.
there you are. So for me, being a teenager when the Smiths came out, or in my very sort of incredibly at precisely the time that I was becoming sort of politicised and aware of of all of that, and identity, your identity, and I started wearing makeup occasionally just to annoy people, and all that kind of thing. That suddenly, but you would have had it, I suppose, with Bowie and all those sort of.
And punk was my thing.
And and he did. You had that sort of that bedroom.
I mean, I remember very, very clearly.
Bedroom companionship. I wasn't that close.
No. But I remember very, very clearly the first time they came on Top of the Pops when he had the flowers up his bum. He had a great big bunch of flowers sticking out of the back of his trousers, which he then took out of his trousers and sort of effetely waved about, really. And I was an ex-punk. This was now, I don't know, 83, 84, whatever it was. And you just, I mean,
I know. Well, you were having done to you what you did to the
exactly, because New Romantics was a horror for me as well. I mean, that was a truly horrific thing that we.
Well, what about things like bands like New Order, who were sort of a hybrid?
Oh God, no. That synth
bit of
pop. Oh dear
punk
God.
ethos.
They did, but no, it wasn't for me. But there was stuff in the 80s I liked, but certainly it wasn't New Romantic and the Smiths. Although, as I say, the Smiths were complex. They were.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we've come to the end of the show now. We're going to play out with one of your final choices now. So tell us about this. This is Thousands Are Sailing by Planxty.
By Planxty. It was anyone who doesn't know, it was a sort of a super group, really, an Irish folks group with Christy Moore, but I can't remember the others, and lots of others in the 80s. Beautiful music, traditional music for the most part, but some original stuff too. But just done brilliantly with possibly more of a political sensibility than, say, the Chieftains, and. Just beautiful music, and for me, I have Irishness in me, and so Irish.
Is that Mafham?
No, Mafham. No, Mafham's actually Yorkshire. No, it's on my mother's side. Is the Irish bit, but
it was Christy Moore, Donal Looney, Andy Irvine, Liam O'Flynn, Johnny Moynihan, Matt Malloy, Bill Whelan, and Paul Brady. So there they were. That's you couldn't get much more Irish than that, could you?
Apart from Liam O'Flynn, he wasn't Irish.
He was Welsh.
He was Welsh. And this song obviously is about. I mean, you can't talk about Irish politics. you can't talk about Irish politics full stop. But it's a hornet's nest, can of worms, and any other comparison you want to make. But. This is Thousands Say the island people have left Ireland in droves over the centuries by their millions, and the Irish diaspora is vast, and so this is about. It's been a part of Irish culture forever, and for different reasons in their history. The most tragic one being the Irish famine, or the potato famine, and which was regarded by, I think, even given official status by, I can't remember the body, not the United Nations, but as a genocide. I mean, it was an absolutely horrific, where the Irish people were starved to death, and well over 1 million of them died. And anyway, so they left. A lot left, the ones that survived, and the Irish population was decimated, and so this is massively covered in song.
Yes.
The Irish are fantastic at singing, writing about their history and about their politics. They're incredibly political, and they're fantastic at it. And the songs and the culture that's come out of all of this is heartbreaking, beautiful, and some of it is fantastic.
I mean, the other side of it is they can enjoy a wallow in it, can't they? 4 or 5 pints of Guinness and the Danny Boy style.
Yeah, I know. I know what you're saying, and to.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not underestimating the horrors of.
No. I know what you're saying, but
British colonialism in Ireland.
There comes a point where you have to move on. And I thought it was really interesting, the Queen's visit to Ireland this year, and the symbolic. Nobody thought that would work, but people in Ireland were really worried that they weren't sure what it was going to mean. And do you know what? It was, and I'm not a monarchist, but it was incredibly symbolically powerful. And I think it was, I think it might have been a watershed moment, and I think it meant an awful lot, actually, weirdly enough, to a lot of Irish people. And so we'll see. You know.
I mean, I was over in Dublin. One of my closest friends lives in Dublin, and I was over last summer. And the first time I'd gone to Dublin and Ireland had been in the late 80s. No, sorry, the late 70s, early 1980. And the feeling, you know, now, after the Celtic Tiger or whatever it was called, is very different. It doesn't seem so it doesn't seem as if they're referencing England at all now. You know, it's nothing to do.
Well, they were
it's
shut
Ireland.
on from a great height by their church.
Yes,
Which
true.
changed the cultural landscape. I mean, so profoundly.
Far, yeah, absolutely. But I didn't get any sense either that people were anti-English or that they were pro. You know, it felt like its own country in a way that it hadn't in 1979.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely, definitely.
But now, of course, the tragedy is that the going away has started again. Yeah. I was listening to a documentary a few days ago about that now there's this whole generation now of Irish people again leaving, which had sort of diminished a little bit.
No, it had.
And now, because of the financial crisis, they're all going again. Yeah.
But it's a different country, and it was so wholly dependent on, on economic links with Britain, particularly. Had them over a barrel for a very long time, and it's a very young country. I mean, it really, so I think it's a very different place now.
Okay, Dominic, thank you very much. We're going to listen to that song in a moment. So next week on Agitpop, it's just going to be me and Comrade Liam here. We're going to be doing some songs from 33 Revolutions per minute and playing some interviews with the author of that book, Dorian Lynskey. So hopefully we'll hear you then. And thank you very much, Dominic. It's been a pleasure. And this is Thousands Are Sailing by Planksty.
Thank you.
Brave Irish heroes, wherever you be, I pray stand a moment and listen to me. Your sons and fair daughters are now going away, and thousands are sailing to America. So good luck to those people, and safe when they land. They are leaving their country for a far distant strand. They are leaving old Ireland, no longer can stay, and thousands are sailing to America. And it's early next morning, their heart gives a sigh. They do kiss their mothers, and then they will say, farewell, dear old father, we must now go away. Their friends and relations and neighbors also, when the trunks are all packed up, all ready to go, oh, the tears from their eyes, they fall down like the rain, and the horses are prancing, going off for the train. So good luck to those people, and safe may they land. They are leaving their country for a far distant strand. They are leaving old Ireland, no longer can stay, and thousands are sailing to America. When the two reach the station, you will hear their last cry, with handkerchiefs waving and bidding goodbye. Their hearts will be breaking on leaving the shore. Farewell, dear old Ireland, will we ne'er see you more? Oh, I pity the mother that rears up the child, and likewise the father who labours and toils to try to support them. He will work night and day, and when they are there, they will go away. Good luck to those people, and safe may they land. They are leaving their country for a far distant strand. They are leaving old Ireland, no longer can stay.